One of my favorite people in the world is my guest today. Bob Kendrick of the Negro League Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Kansas City is our guest. Bob, before we get into baseball, how things going at the museum? I know 2020 was one of those years. It's been tough for everybody. What shape is the museum in right now?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time for all of us in this country, and certainly us here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. As we shut our doors about a year ago, March 14th to be exact, and we were closed for about 3 months. So we reopened in June of last year, June 16th, and then we started operating under the city's 25% capacity COVID protocol. And to our fortune, we've been having some people slowly but surely get out. But as you can recall, we were in the midst of celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues. And so many of those plans fell by the wayside. But I've oftentimes said to people that if you're going to be a steward of this story, man, you can't wallow in self pity. Those players in the Negro Leagues never cried about the self.
Man, you sound more like Buck O'Neil every day.
And so they went out and did something about it. And so we knew we had to pick ourselves up, man. And I use a bad baseball analogy for coronavirus. Coronavirus, Oz, was that big, nasty right-hander who just threw one high and tight and knocked
Brush
you
it back.
down.
That's right.
Yeah, music, knock you down. But you got to get back in the batter's box, dust yourself off, and try to figure out how you're going to hit that sucker.
That's
And
right.
that's exactly what we did. And we were able to salvage the year. And I couldn't be more prouder of our team here and the resilient spirit that we demonstrated through what is still a difficult time for a lot of people in this country.
Yeah. So attendance is up.
Attendance is, we're getting attendance. We're not at the level that we were because we lost so much of the baseball season. And as you know, so many fans would be traveling in to see the Cardinals when they come to Kansas City or the other teams. And we missed those opportunities. But I'm excited that as we move into a new baseball season, we already had the Texas Rangers bring their team here. And I got a chance to do that again. I didn't get a chance to do that last year. And that never gets old for me, man. And so I hope that we'll see more baseball teams, and with more people getting vaccinated, eventually more fans following those teams in to see them play the Royal.
All right. Well, let's talk a little baseball, man. Um, how much? What made the Negro Leagues different than the major leagues?
Oh, you know, you knew Buck, and he'd tell you. It was just a different style of play, Oz. That's why they say you could have played in the Negro Leagues because you were going to see great baseball. You were going to see fundamentally sound. Guys were going to bunt their way on. They were going to steal second. They're going to steal third. And as Buck would say, if you weren't too smart, they were going to steal home. He would tell people that you couldn't go to the concession stand because you might miss something that you ain't never seen before. So the pace of the game was a lot faster in the Negro Leagues. And sometimes the major leagues would accuse them of showboating. Now, you made those plays where you dove in the hole, flipped it behind your back, started the double play. The major leaguers say, oh, they just showboating. But as Buck would say, it's only showboating when you can't do it.
That's right. You do what you do. Yeah. Now that what are the descendants and everybody that's associated with the game now? What do they think about the fact that now you're recognized as part of the major leagues?
I think for a lot of baseball fans, it was one of those things where people were excited because it was so long overdue. The Negro Leagues, for us, we always knew that the Negro Leagues were major. But now it is being formally recognized as so. And so for me here at the museum, and I think our team, it was more about the reckoning, the atonement, the acknowledgement of what these leagues represented both on and off the field. You knew these players, you knew some of these players. They were very self-assured athletes. They knew how good they were. They knew how good their league was. And quite frankly, the major leaguers knew how good they were. So they were never seeking validation from anyone. But it is great that years later, Major League Baseball has come back and validated again those courageous owners who finance those teams and these courageous athletes who endured tremendous social adversity to play this game, and that it will now be reflected in the annals of baseball history. And that is exciting to me, even more than the statistics that will ultimately be integrated, because you can never reduce the Negro Leagues to stats. But for those who love and need stats, I'm glad we got some stats to back up all the lore and legend that we tout here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
What was the name of the guy that I met at the museum that hit the ball 4 miles? The ball he hit the ball.
Oh, yes, yes,
You
yes.
remember that?
Oh, yeah, he just recently passed, and I was just looking at his display today out of Topeka, and he hit the home run.
That's right.
750, yeah, about 757. I think it was 756.
Yeah, it was illustrated. The ball going out of the ballpark and where it finally stopped. Yeah, he had a map. He carried with
He
him.
had his map, and he was so proud to show you his map.
And that ball did go a long way.
And he said, you remember he told me, he said he felt the bat compressed about that much. And they were playing in New Mexico where he hit that home run. And he said went over 2 city blocks and knocked the peaches out of the latest peach tree in the
backyard. we just finished with Jackie Robinson Day. What is it that you would like for people to that you feel they haven't gotten that they they don't understand about Jackie Robinson?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is about Jackie, and I see this a lot when people come to visit the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and they discover that Jackie played in the Negro Leagues. I think people think Jackie just walked out of nowhere and started playing with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But his real rookie season was here in Kansas City in 1945. And so baseball has done a wonderful job of helping us understand the significance of that monumental moment in time when he steps out on the field as a member of the Brooklyn Dodgers. We haven't done nearly as good a job of helping people understand where he came from and that his roots are firmly entrenched in the Negro Leagues. Started here in 1945. And the year that he was here in 1945, Ozzie fell in love with everything that Kansas City is famous for, barbecue and jazz.
And you guys still enjoy a lot of jazz down there now, right at the museum, right?
We do, man. The live music scene is great here. And of course, it's been affected to some extent by the pandemic, but it's slowly but surely starting to come back. And so there's always been a plethora of places where you can go and hear live music in Kansas City. And the musicianship in Kansas City is as good as any place in the country. And that's why Buck loved 18th and Vine so much. As he said when he joined the Kansas City Monarchs in 1938, he said, I knew I was coming to the heart of America. I never knew I was coming to the center of the universe. Because 18th and Vine was jumping.
Talk about the St. Louis Stars a little bit and what made them so special.
Well, number one, they had some of the greatest talent assembled as any Negro League franchise. Now, the Stars were originally the St. Louis Giants. The St. Louis Giants were one of the original 8 teams established when the Negro League started now 101 years ago. And then they eventually became the legendary St. Louis Stars, home to Hall of Famers Cool Papa Bell, Mule Suttles, Willie Wells, who Buck O'Neill said was you before we knew who you were. Willie Wells was doing those same kinds of magical things there in the city of St. Louis. And the Stars Oz were one of the few Negro League teams that had their own ballpark. Yeah, they had Stars Park right over where Harris Stowe is today. And so that was a rarity in the Negro Leagues because not many of the Negro League owners had their own ballparks. So they would rent the stadiums from major league teams, which is actually one of the reasons why it took so long to integrate this game. So you always got to remember, whenever they say it ain't about the money, it's always about the money.
You know, Hank Aaron started his career in the Negro Leagues as well, and what made him become? How did he become a pro at such a young age?
And I have to admit, my heart's still a little heavy over the passing of the late great Henry Aaron, who was my childhood idol, my all-time favorite Major League ball player as a kid growing up in nearby Crawfordville, Georgia. A lot of people, and we've got this wonderful photograph of him, and I know you've seen it. He's standing at the train station in Mobile, your hometown, standing at the train station in Mobile, and he's about to leave to go join the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro Leagues. He's 18 years old. And at that time, Oz, he's a skinny, cross-handed hitting shortstop. And so Henry Aaron was, yeah, exactly, was a right-hand hitter who was hitting with his left hand on top. That is unorthodox. But Henry Aaron was knocking the cover off the baseball
Literally.
in a highly unorthodox fashion. And so when it gets to the Clowns, they put the right hand on top. And the rest, as we say, is history. He was shortly after discovered by the Boston Braves, who would become the Milwaukee Braves, who, of course, would become the Atlanta Braves. Henry Aaron, as you know, will go down in this sport as one of his all-time greatest players. And quite frankly, in a game of numbers, and our game is a game of numbers, no one's numbers are better than Henry Aaron. And so, yeah, the fact that it all started, though, in the Negro Leagues, in some ways, it validates the talent that was there in the Negro Leagues, because you know what Henry Aaron did. You know what Willie Mays did, and Ernie Banks, and Roy Campanella. These are stars who left the Negro Leagues and became some of Major League's biggest stars. And so you've got to be able to be reasonable enough in your thought process to think that maybe there were some other guys in this league known as the Negro League that could play too.
Well, give us a few of those, the names of the guys that you felt could play in the big leagues and would have had a real big impact.
Oh man, I can tell you with no level of uncertainty. We can start with the 10 that are on our field of legends. And you can start with those 10, and you've got the great Cuban ball player standing at the plate hitting, 6'4" tall, movie star, good looks, the great Martin Dihigo out of Cuba, the only baseball player to hold the distinction of being in 5 different countries' baseball halls of fame. Ozzie's in the Mexican, Cuban, Venezuelan, Dominican, and in Cooperstown. They nicknamed him El Maestro, the master, because he could do it all, played all 9 positions, played all 9 of them well. You got Gibson, the great Josh Gibson, catching. Oh, he would have tore up Major League pitching just like he tore up everybody else. He played the kids. Everywhere he played, he hit, and he hit with power. You know, so it wasn't just in the Negro Leagues. He went to Puerto Rico. He went to the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Venezuela. He lit everybody up, including major leaguers, because against major leaguers in head-to-head competition, Oz, he hit over 420, and he was doing it as a catcher. And then you got Oscar Charleston in center field, and that was Buck's guy. Buck always thought that Charleston was the greatest baseball player he had ever seen. He was Willie Mays before we ever knew who Willie Mays was. And Buck says he never saw a center fielder who could go back on a ball the way Charleston could. Just uncanny instinct. Seemed to know where that ball was coming down right off the crack of the bat. I tell the story all the time. You remember the great catch that Willie Mays makes in the polo grounds, the great basket catch. And really the throw was better than the catch, but because he had to run it, as we say in the country, a country mile to make that catch, you know, everybody remembers the catch, but he doubles off the runner with the great throw. But all the old timers in the Negro League Oz say, had that been Oscar Charleston, man, he'd have been waiting for that ball to come down.
He's that fast, huh?
He just had that instinct. You know, he played a very shallow center field. And so you couldn't bloop it in front of him. And unless you hit it on a rope, you couldn't get it over his head. He just seemed to know where that ball was coming down right off the crack of the bat.
We could be here all day, but I got to let you go. But before we go, what is it that you want people to know when they come to Kansas City and they come to the Negro League Hall of Fame and Museum? What should they expect?
You should expect to see America at her worst, but also America at her triumphant best. And so, yeah, this story is anchored against the ugliness of American segregation, a horrible chapter in this country's history. But out of segregation rose this wonderful story of triumph and conquest. And man, it's all based on one small, simple principle. You won't let me play with you. I create my own. I create my own. And when you stop to think about that, that is the American way. And so while America was trying to prevent these courageous athletes from playing the game they love, it was the American spirit that allowed them to persevere and prevail. And that story is so beautifully captured here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. So you come here and you're going to meet some of the greatest athletes who ever played this game. But by the time you walk away from this experience, I think you walk away with a much deeper, richer appreciation for just how great this country really is. And that's what this story is all about.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's always great visiting with you, man. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. You guys stick around. We'll be right back.